Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Necessary Roughness right here on the Bite Size Sports Network. It is cut day. We've got a fun, pretty free-flowing, news-oriented episode today. As always, I'm your host, John, and today I'm joined by Ben Parker. First time, uh, first time on the show. You can find him on KC Sports and Money on YouTube, Odds On Favorites podcast on Spotify and Apple, and also a monthly guest, I think he said it is, on the Simon and Friends podcast. And you guys are all familiar with Simon and his exploits. You can check him out there as well. Ben, how you doing, brother? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. We've had this date going on for months and months. I've really had a big plan to be here tonight, right? So I'm
Yeah,
excited to be on here. Nah, listen, we're going to talk some NFL football tonight. And the season is so close. Before the season can start, man, there's got to be some hard news for some of these guys getting cut and let loose. So,
hmm
we're going to cover some of that tonight. Some of them will get picked up by other teams and some won't. But we got so much to talk about, man. A lot.
yeah.
Excited to be
That's
here.
that's what's interesting about Cut Day is there's not as much finality to it as it feels like. Like
Right.
this, for a lot of teams, this isn't going to be the 53 with which they
Mm-hmm.
enter week one. So we'll talk a little bit, about these waiver candidates who were cut and, kind of the situation around their teams that made it so and other teams that can maybe join, things like that. But I did want to start the show with a couple pieces of news, non-cut related. And the first of which is A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. Neck injury, to my understanding, is opting for surgery and will miss the entire 2024 season, which is tough. He's struggled with some injuries recently, but it does kind of open the door for Marshawn Lloyd in that offense behind Josh Jacobs. I know you're a big draft guy. We've done draft shows together. How do you feel about Marshawn Lloyd in that offense, both from a football perspective and a fantasy perspective, as far as like touch share, and how do you think he'll fare with what should be a pretty decent sized workload?
Yeah, I totally agree. First of all, AJ Dillon, well, that really sucks. I mean, anytime you've got any kind of an injury that wipes out your season, that's bad enough. Then you add on the fact that, oh, wow, we're starting talking about neck area, which, we'll find out. It's not necessarily career ending, but it could be. It might be the point at which he just decides, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, all things considered, risk considered. So, let's
Mhm.
wish the best for AJ Dillon, of course. But then, I think fantasy comes first, right, man? Because there's so many fantasy people these days. It's a massive
Yeah.
industry, right? So everybody's now like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, Dylan's out. Who's next? It's Marshawn Lloyd, right? So I like Lloyd. I really do. But he's not AJ Dillon. It's one thing to have a guy like Dillon who showed that he can do so much for the Packers and fit so well. And now you're bringing in the rookie, and I don't remember which round he was drafted. It's third or fourth, right? It wasn't super high, like one of the top two rounds. And so,
Yep.
I like him. People should pick him up, but if that's your best option on your fantasy team, you might want to do some other shuffling in your league, right? Depending on what league you're in. I do like Lloyd though, the USC guy. I really like him. He brings a lot of things to the table, so I do enjoy what he will bring to the Packers.
Yeah, I agree. And the Packers, in recent years too, like especially with Aaron Jones, they haven't put a ton of miles on him.
Right.
They haven't really ran him into the ground. I feel like they'll probably be wanting to anyway take a similar approach with Josh Jacobs, getting a lot of money. I led the league in touches. I think it was 2 seasons ago, 2022, with the Raiders. But if they can spell him a little bit with Lloyd, I think they'll opt to. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a dynamo rookie season for him necessarily, but I mean those guys are going to run the ball. You're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. I think they like both of those tight ends, so could be a strong season for both of them. But the AJ Dillon news does suck. Rapid danger. Thanks for hopping in, Trev. You're exactly right. Neck injury like that. From a personal standpoint, like AJ Dillon reflecting, a neck injury like that is something that very well may end his career. He's not going to be able to to have a Peyton Manning Denver arc coming off. He's going to have to use that neck if he does keep playing NFL football. So that's tough. The other piece of news is actually a trade that some people closer to the organization seem to have either seen it coming or are less shocked by it than I was. But just from like a quality of player standpoint and a scarcity at that position, it really, really shocked me. And that was the Rams sending off-ball linebacker Ernest Jones to the Tennessee Titans, our boy James's Tennessee Titans. Now, this one really caught me off guard because, I mean, there are the sort of superfluous things like Aaron Donald, when he retired, he said, "Hey, this defense is EJ's now." You know, that was the guy to whom he was planning to pass the torch. Really had a good feel of that defense. Super versatile as an off-ball linebacker. Great blitzer. Able to get pressure. Really solid in coverage, and a solid run defender. But a guy with whom you can do a lot of things on the defensive side of the ball. I think 4.5 sacks last year. And if I'm not mistaken, he led off-ball linebackers in pressures as well. So kind of a weird move. It just sounds like they weren't prepared to offer whatever extension he was requesting. And the pocketbook's open for Rand Carthon and the Titans. We've seen that already this offseason. So that side of it doesn't surprise me at all. But the return looks to be a 5th rounder, and the Rams are sending a 6th to Tennessee as well. So it's got to be.
Here you go. You can have him.
Yeah, it's got to be all financial. It's got to be all financial. It's like the Amari Cooper trade. It's like a 5th for a top 15 receiver. So they just did not want to pay him. I mean, obviously, that opens up some room for them to make some other moves. Plugged a lot of money into the offensive line this past offseason, and they must just kind of feel like they can get by. It's never been a position that Les Snead and the boys have valued very highly, but just from an outside perspective, neither of us are fans of either team, so we're not super close to the situation. But from an outside perspective, how did that deal strike you initially? Were you kind of as shocked as I was? Not even just by the return, but by the fact that they got rid of him at all.
I was totally caught off guard. I wasn't in the loop enough on the Rams. You know, it's halfway across the country in a division that I don't necessarily study a whole lot to be in the loop on the fact that Ernest Jones might get traded because, you know, they didn't want to pay him. You know, and it's not like you already mentioned it. It's not like they got a lot of talent over on the defensive side of the football. They've got some, but it's nowhere near what it needs to be. And, you know, now without Aaron Donald, listen, God bless him, God bless Aaron Donald. But as good as Ernest Jones is and can be, he couldn't touch what Aaron Donald could do for that defense. So while he may be flexible and he's got the young and up and coming stuff, he's got the voice as the kind of the captain of the defense, so to speak. You know, that's a huge void left by Aaron Donald. It's going to take more than Ernest Jones to fill it. I'm a little surprised the Rams didn't want to pay him, even though you mentioned it. They don't stress linebacker. But you figure Matt Stafford is going to be off the books here in a year or two. It's not like they were going to be throwing a lot of money at quarterback unless they've got something in mind at quarterback that we don't know about, you know, coming up next offseason. So I'm a little surprised they didn't want to pay him. I was completely caught off guard, didn't see that coming. And you're right. The Titans are basically taking turns with the Falcons right now for pulling off aggressive moves to try to make something happen right now. You know, forget next year or 2 years, right now. You know, hats off the Titans for getting this deal on the cheap. I mean, the Rams gave him away. You know, we'll give you a 6th round pick and you send us a 5 and you can have him. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I mean, what day 3 picks for, you know, high-end starters in the NFL kind of feel like those NBA trades where one of the pieces is like cash considerations.
Yeah.
Yes. When you're swapping a 5th and a 6th and just getting off of a guy, it's like what even is that? That's such a, you know, weird, vague return. But I mean, outside of him at inside linebacker, they did bring Troy Reeder back after a brief hiatus. He might not even be slated to start. You've got like Christian Roseboom. It's not like they had, you know, this young budding obvious talent to replace him. So that one was just really, really goofy for me. But the day that this show lands on is cut day in the NFL. So that is going to be a big chunk of the show today. Looks like at least 10 of you live on YouTube watching. If you are, drop your biggest surprise cut that you saw today in the comments, and we'll talk about it. We might bring it up. I'm just going to kind of breeze through the cut tracker, bring up some that stuck out to me. Same for you, Ben. If there's any that I don't mention for a specific team, feel free to shout it out, and we'll talk about it. But what's interesting about today again is, there's not really that much finality to it yet. Like a lot of these guys we'll mention will end up on NFL rosters by the end of the season, and or even before the season starts with the way waivers go here. And a lot of teams too are sort of betting that a lot of these guys they cut get through waivers and they're able to throw them on their practice squad, because a lot of these guys that get cut, they're still very well liked within those buildings.
Yes.
And they have investments in these guys, so they do hope that they don't get picked up on waivers and they're able to go to them late in the season when they do get some injuries. But the first one for me is actually a non-cut, which is a little weird.
Yes.
So the Eagles,
why not?
the Eagles hung on to James Bradbury, and that's a little surprising too, because especially the way the end of last season went, especially with the influx of young, questionable, yes, but young talent that's come in. You do bring back CJ, you've got Slay. There's going to be Keely Ringo still there. There's going to be some interesting things going on there. Maybe they still feel like they can get a day 3 pick for him somewhere. That doesn't seem likely to me. But that was a goofy keep, because you've also got the rookies, obviously. And it seems a little crowded there now, and that just felt like a super easy way to just kind of cut bait with some of these older players that didn't quite get the job done when they made that flurry of moves 2 years back with the vets. So that one stood out to me. They did cut a guy like Josh Jobe out of Alabama, younger guy. Probably would have just been a special teamer where he'd have stayed on the roster. But, little stuff like that I find really interesting this time of year, just because you still don't have the full picture of what these teams' plans are.
Right.
But a vet like that, I mean, I know some Eagles fans, they've been talking about Bradbury getting cut for like 8 months. So it's just, that one was a little goofy to me. What's up, Kev? We've got Noah Brown. I do love me some Noah Brown.
Yeah.
Looked awesome at times in Houston. I'll never forget I think he had a 4 touchdown game at OSU. Fun player, good prototypical size. Kev wants to know if we feel that Noah Brown lands somewhere. Thinks he could probably be a 3rd or 4th receiver for someone else out there, and I agree. I'm looking at it's not an urgent need, but my Vikings are kind of a team that before Tim Patrick sounds like Tim Patrick's going to land with the Lions now, but even when Tim Patrick was cut, I was like, oh man, if we could get a healthy season out of Tim Patrick, that'd be fun. And Noah Brown's similar. Like I think he could be a 4th, 5th receiver for a team. 3rd on a bad team, probably. But another thing, like maybe Washington, maybe they don't get the Ayuk thing done, and maybe he actually gets a lot of targets over there. But the Eagles too. So they did bring in Jahan Dotson to be that number 3, but they did cut Paris Campbell, which was a little interesting as well. So any other teams come to mind that might be a little short on receiver? I thought maybe even Buffalo could use a little extra juice there, but any other teams come to mind that, because we've seen Noah Brown be a solid receiver at the NFL level. So could probably fill a void for some teams. Any others come to mind?
I like the Bills. The Patriots, of course, could keep adding pieces. They're bereft of talent there.
Yeah.
Noah Brown's going to catch on somewhere. Both of you are right on that. He's going to get called on somewhere, and y'all placed it exactly right. It's either the 3 receiver or the 4 receiver. I was a little surprised Houston let him go because while I get it, it's a crowded receiver room. It's not like he cost you a lot of money, and you figure injuries are going to happen at some point during the year. Wouldn't it be nice to have Noah Brown slide into any spot where the injury pops up? I don't think I would have let him go. Now, have I studied the Texans depth chart to see exactly who took that spot? No. But, I really like Noah Brown. He will land somewhere. I figure he'll probably wait a day or two. He'll probably have 3 or 4 teams calling, and then he and his agent will just kind of pick out the one they want. It's not like they're going to throw tons of money at him, but he'll have a spot on a roster this season. No question about it. I'm going to stay on the wide receiver spot here and go to the New York Giants. Not so much of a surprise, just interesting. If I'm getting this right, I let go of Allen Robinson and Isaiah Hodgins from their wide receiver room. These have been 2 staples for them over the past, say, 2 seasons-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is they aren't very talented. And it does indicate that the Giants have been working to upgrade this weapons talent and this receivers room. They've got Jalen Hyatt from last year's draft that they're hoping cashes in. Darius Slayton's been a staple. And then they added, of course, Neighbors. So the Giants are hoping here that we can get rid of the less talented guys and just get these younger talented guys out there on the field. And I still would have liked one of these guys for depth, especially Hodgins, I think. But
yeah,
it may be that the Giants are just trying to clear room so that these younger guys don't feel like they're having to battle for spots, right? Because you end up sometimes with the locker room where you're like, you know what? That veteran's playing a little bit better right now. Why isn't he starting? And sometimes that can create a little bit of bitterness feelings. So maybe the Giants are just clearing it out a little bit here. We want these younger guys on the field. It is interesting, though, that the Giants have been able to upgrade their receivers room enough to let go of these 2 guys.
Yeah, and, I went back and forth with this one a little bit, too, because, you like Neighbors, you like Hyatt, similar skill sets to an extent. I think what they do best is the same. Neighbors a lot more versatile and can do a lot more things, but with that group, and if you count that as a trio, I don't know if you like Wandale. I don't know if you're going to see Wandale more than you see Darius Slayton, for example.
Right.
But if that's the case, I mean, are you going to go? How can you get all 3 of them into the slot? You know what I mean? Like, you want to hit the Neighbors slot third. You don't want Hyatt getting hands on him at the line of scrimmage. He took like 88% of his Tennessee snaps in the slot before coming to the league. And then Wandale is kind of that gadgety guy. Slayton, a little bit more of a true receiver. And I agree with Hodgins. He's shown to be pretty solid in stints. I am getting flashbacks of the 2022 Vikings-Giants playoff game where Hodgins daggered us a few times. But which is a funny sentence. But they've got Miles Boykin to kind of supplement that type of body type if that's the way they want to go. But I'm curious to see how they deploy those skill sets in the receiver room, given the cuts of those guys, because, different players for sure, but I think there's some redundancy in where you'd ideally see them lining up to kind of maximize their skill sets. Another one. So we talked a little bit about Washington, obviously moved on from Dotson. They might be a candidate to take on some of these waiver wire receivers.
Yep.
Could see them bringing on a guy like Hodgins, talked about Noah Brown, but another one. And if I remember correctly, this was a guy you liked as well. I think we talked on Simon's show when this guy was coming out of the draft. They cut Ricky Stromberg, and I didn't see him in camp, so I'm not gonna speak like I did, but man, I loved his college tape, and it's tough to, I think, the two interior guys who won the backup spots are Chris Paul and Michael Dieter. And it's like, all right, again, I'm not in the building, but it's tough to see. It was tough to wrap my head around Stromberg getting cut there with the youth on his side. And what we saw from him in college. Was that one a shocker for you, or have you heard anything or seen anything from him in camp that would lead you to to see why he might have been let go?
No, I just assumed that, hey, because I liked him out of college too, right? I didn't project him as a superstar, but I said, hey, this looks like a guy who kind of anchored down his spot for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
But give him a year or two to develop. Well, they really didn't give him that. It's like, hey, you got your chance, you're out. They have done a little bit of work on the inside of that offensive line, but it's not enough. It's not enough to me to be letting go of a guy like Stromberg unless he just looks awful, which maybe he did. Dieter, to me, is, I don't want Michael Dieter on the field, to be honest. I mean, if he's on there for 2 or 3 games, that's it. I don't really want him out there a lot.
Yep.
So it did surprise me that they let go of a draft pick like this, who I like, so quickly. I really did not see that coming. No.
Lee, thanks for popping in. Good to see you. Which team are you referencing here? No surprising cuts on the offense. Is that yeah, let me know which team you're referencing there. And a lot of these are so a lot of these for me, and I think for a lot of folks, when we see, especially teams we don't cover closely, when we see guys on their rookie deals getting cut, we sort of default to our draft assessment, so a lot of it is just kind of
every
like,
time.
Oh, he was one of my guys. Like, what happened? Like, there's no way I was wrong.
No, there's no way he sucked.
Yeah, he didn't suck. I've seen him not suck. But another one of those for me was in Atlanta, Tommy Togiai. If you remember him out of Ohio State, I really liked him coming out. But when I looked at that Falcons interior, it's kind of a pretty nice group. It's a little older, but I mean, you're talking obviously Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata up top. Ruka Rohoro has looked pretty good. I've seen some cut-ups of his snaps early on, and you've also got Eddie Goldman, Taquan Graham, Zach Harrison. So deep group there. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. I won't belabor that one too much. But there was also a funny one out of Arizona. Michael Carter, the running back one, was cut there. And when Jonathan Gannon was interviewed about why we didn't see more Michael Carter in the final preseason game, he said something to the effect of he didn't have anything else to prove. And then he was cut on cut day. And those types of things really piss me off. When you get that coach speak kind of stuff and he pushes your question away, and then completely contradict, like the classic Josh Rosen is our starting quarterback. If you remember that from
I remember
right before they defaulted to Kyler. It's just those types of things that really rub me the wrong way. And I liked Michael Carter, but I'm going to lump him in with Samaje Perine, who's another running back that's going to be out there. I know my Vikings are only rostering 2 running backs right now after cutting 4 today. One of whom was Gophers legend Mo Ibrahim, who a lot of folks liked coming out, just had a lot of tread on the tires, some injuries, still in denial a little bit there. I really wanted the jersey. But what is grief if not love persevering? So I think both those running backs could provide something to a new team. We've seen good production out of Perine in Cincinnati and other places. Michael Carter, even though he got a little buried on the Jets depth chart once Breece Hall got there, he looked pretty darn good in spurts. Was a really strong after contact player early in his career as well. Are there any other teams that you've seen? I've obviously been scouring 53s kind of since 3 p.m. Central. But any other teams that you feel like might actually be able to get these guys on the field this season yet, and might be picking them up tomorrow between both guys who I think we've seen proven production from?
Yeah, I am curious to see maybe the Bengals go back with Pirine, because I never understood why they let go of Mixon, and then Mixon seemed to be a perfect back for their system, what they do, but they did. I wouldn't be surprised if Pirine didn't end up back with the Bengals again. The Dallas Cowboys instantly come to mind. Why couldn't they go
Yep.
with Pirine or with Michael Carter, either one? It's not like they don't have running backs, but I don't know that they have a lot of great options at running back right now. So why not bring in one of these guys, especially Pirine, I think. So to me, Pirine's going to get picked up somewhere. He's on my list right here of the notables, that were interesting. So Pirine's a guy that I
Mhm.
do feel like, maybe you don't want him on your fantasy team, because I don't necessarily know that he's going to get a ton of snaps this season, but I do figure he gets a roster spot somewhere on a team this
Yep.
year. So Cowboys and Bengals instantly come to mind. I'm going to come back to right up your alley. Again, not a surprise so much, just kind of a disappointment. Lewis Sign, safety for the Vikings, had the major leg injury, I think, a year or so ago. You can speak to it better than I can. This is a
Mhm.
guy coming out of Georgia, safety, that a lot of people really liked. A lot of people liked him higher up in the first round than he even went. Some people said, no, that's a second round guy. That was a guy I liked. That was a guy that was on my board. I said, hey, this guy, and here we are, very high draft pick. And now he's
Yep.
gone rather quickly. I think most of that's injury related. But again, man, it just goes to show you, don't put all your eggs in one basket with any first round draft pick, second round pick, any free agent. You're building a team here. So many things happen here, and Lewis Sign is evidence of that.
Yeah, he was the very first draft pick of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So that was tough. Pick 32 in 2022. Big time leg injury early on. Of course, sucks, especially for a guy who just plays with his hair on fire, like we saw him do at Georgia. And it was funny. There was sort of there was sort of a resurgence in belief in the Vikings fan base after that second preseason game. He played almost the whole game. They let him really kind of showcase his skills: 10 tackles, a pick, a forced fumble, a sack. Should have had a second sack, and he was flying all over the place. But again, this is against a guy with that pedigree. Should look like one of the best players on the field in the late third quarter of a second preseason game. And they ended up keeping actually 5 safeties and 11 total DBs overseen. They kept Bynum, Metellus Smith, Jay Ward, and Theo Jackson. I think Jay Ward probably, there's some more corner flexibility there, played a lot of nickel in college. So that's probably part of it there. And Theo Jackson last season outright won snaps over Lewis Seen. We went to a ton of big nickel. 3 safeties were on the field constantly. So Jackson actually got a lot of play last season and was fine for the most part. There were a couple blunders, but he did make some plays. And I think it's a guy they just trust a lot more. For Seen, as much of his mantra was, I'm coming to the league to stack bodies. He said that on before rookie camp. And the way he plays, one of his biggest issues was tackling, and it was just discipline in that regard. He's a little spindly for the NFL level, so when he comes just flying in to crack somebody, sometimes it's about wrapping up. And that's a bummer. He's got so much speed, but this is a guy who was drafted with the idea of playing in that Donatel system, and never really got any traction with Brian Flores' defense. So that one was tough. And Kwesi's second draft pick of his Vikings career has made the Dallas 53-man roster, Andrew Booth, despite being a dumpster fire from what I've seen in preseason, and showed some flashes. But so those are a couple goofy ones. What's interesting? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it kind of sucks. It's not like Rey Mysterio over in the WWE where you can fly off the top ropes and just jump kick somebody. You've actually got to wrap up and tackle people. Even if you've got the talent and the athleticism, you still got to have the fundamentals. You still got to wrap up. Otherwise you're not going to get as much playing time.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And this sort of speaks to, I think, what'll be a broader topic in the NFL this upcoming season, and it's how these new kickoff rules are going to affect the bottom end of these 53-man rosters, because suddenly the skill sets you're looking for in those, fifth, sixth corners, those fifth, sixth receivers, that fourth linebacker, are a little bit different. And especially, it seems, in the returner skill set, these are going to function a little bit more like run plays than they ever have.
Right.
It's going to favor more kind of change of direction skill set than, straight line speed. Once you're up to top speed, you're not going to have the same runway. And that's probably most of the reason Vikings cut Kene Nwangwu, who is abysmal when he's running the ball on offense. Probably his best preseason of his career to this point in that regard, but just doesn't give you much, kind of slow to read things out. And he was cut. And initially when the kickoff rules were changed, in my head, that was just, okay, more value is going to be placed on the kick return team and the kick returner. So if you have a guy who's kind of that return specialist, shouldn't his roster spot be safer? But I think it's a little bit less so, because those specialists now might be more like, fourth running backs for a lot of teams.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see who they end up having back there. But have any other cuts to you sort of stood out as like, oh, I wonder if that's because of the new kickoff rules? Because I think it does change the mentality around the bottom of your roster.
No, to be honest, for me, I'm behind on the special teams stuff because I've been focusing on so much else this offseason. But I've been hearing from so many different people, you among them, Simon among them, about how much this is going to make a difference come NFL time, come regular season time. And we're seeing not all NFL teams have this figured out yet, and they may not until next offseason, right, when they kind of see it in real time what's happening here. But you're right. Teams have to make decisions at the bottom of these rosters, and some of that is going to be, hey, is this a kick return guy? Or, hey, is it really more of a running play and we keep the fourth running back, right? You're 100% right on that. I'm behind on it, even though I've been fully aware of it. So I haven't been following, the releases here in relation to the kick returns. But it's going to change. The special teams rules is going to change how you play some of these players and some of these games. So, yeah, I'm fascinated by it. If you don't mind, I'm gonna hit a couple of comments here on the comment line. We've got Trevor said, Ben, give me strong Mel Kiper vibes. I'm here for it. Thank you, Trevor. I've never heard that before, but thank you.
Yeah. Mitch, thanks for subscribing, brother.
Yes, thank you, Mitch. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Nate said Vikings should have cut Jettis. I'll let you speak to that here in a second. And then Trevor also said, Trevor had a second comment up there. Oh yeah, the Kadarius Toney thing. So
yes.
I've got Kadarius Toney's takes because I cover the Chiefs a lot. Kadarius Toney is exhibit 1A of why you can't always get too wrapped up in talent and potential, right? Because he's got it oozing out of every pore of his body, right? The fact that he can, at any moment, take it to the house or just surprise you and drop a 40-yard bomb on you. And, it just comes out of every pore of his body. And yet, he can't keep a spot. And I'm surprised. I was really surprised he stayed with the Chiefs as long as he did. The reason he did is because they had kind of let the wide receiver room slow down a little bit. And so, there he was. But between the injuries, which just never, ever stopped, the Kadarius Toney injuries never stopped. He was just as likely to get an injury on any play as he was to score a touchdown. It was kind of a seesaw right there between those two options, right? Wasn't going to be any in between. It was either injury or touchdown. But then also the drops. Man, the drops were brutal. And you start to figure out, again, it goes back to a little bit of the McCall Hardman thing as well. It's one thing to be fast and athletic, and every NFL team wants guys like that. I mean, every single one of them needs at least one or two guys like that. But if you can't do the fundamentals, if you can't catch and run routes, you're just not going to get on the field as much as you would like to, no matter how much talent you've got. They can only run so many jet sweeps for you, right? And only so many bubble screens, right? There's only so much of that they can do. You got to be able to stay healthy. you got to be able to catch the passes. You got to be able to run the routes. And so for Kadarius Toney, obviously, as Kansas City has strengthened their receiving room, I don't know if the Juju Smith-Schuster thing was the final nail in the coffin for Kadarius Toney, or if he was already heading out the door anyway. But the receiving room got really crowded there, and Kadarius Toney, who probably shouldn't have been on the Chiefs last year had they had a little bit better receiving room,
Yeah.
Tony is gone, unfortunately, talent notwithstanding.
Yeah, and it's funny he wound up on the Chiefs too, because particularly at Florida, he's one of few guys who in the open field reminded me a little bit of Dante Hall.
Yeah. Yes.
The kind of shit he would do laterally, not just running straight, like those kind of like back jukes where he just stops on a dime. That sort of stuff in the open field was just unbelievable if he's able to reel the ball in and be where he needs to be, and kind of with that sort of telepathy with the quarterback, that chemistry, if he was ever able to build that up, because he's kind of like the broken play dream, if he's able to work back to the ball, just catch it in space and do something, or just find that soft spot and make some guys miss. And that's what draws you to him, and that's what almost allows you to roster him against your better judgment, when you could find a more sure-handed, consistent guy who might not have the same ceiling. So Tony was an interesting one. One of the teams I find most fascinating coming into this season is the Bills still, because they're really turning a page when it comes to that old guard on defense, that 2016, 2017, those two free agent classes that sort of set the tone in that last Tyrod Taylor year of like a winning environment, right? And that team's been one of the mainstays since then. And now, of course, you've got Josh Allen, and it's a similar to Mahomes, where whatever we can cobble together around this guy, we still feel like we've got a chance. And they've had some worse injury luck than the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have had their fair share, and they haven't been able to sustain the same type of success as Kansas City. But that's the reason the bottom of this roster was so interesting to me. Like, this was actually a team I thought Gable Stevenson might make the final 53, and I don't know if you know, he's a Olympic gold medal wrestler and Minnesota native.
That's right. I heard about it 2 months ago. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So that was, I wanted to mention that one a little bit because my buddies and I were pretty excited that he was trying out anyway. But they also moved on from Frank Gore Jr., who was beaten out by Ray Davis, and I think Ty Johnson is the third running back. So another team too that might be in the mix for P. Ryan, Michael Carter, that those types of guys as well. Just because, I think we've seen even less out of Ty Johnson than we have from Michael Carter, and he was kind of on the back of that Jets running back rotation for a while too, incidentally. So I think there could be some movement there. Like, I think this is a team who's current 53. You might see 3-4 more guys swapped out of that once they get to waivers, because I think there are going to be a lot of guys that they'll feel like they need to go get once it comes down to it here. There was one other. They also cut Lel Collins, which, I know he's had a bit of a fall from grace, but you'd think he'd still be rosterable, particularly on a team that's got a few question marks there. You've got Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins, obviously, but keeping Collins as like a swing tackle would have been really nice to kind of have as a luxury if he's able to even perform similarly to what we've seen, not even necessarily in Dallas, but when he was okay in Cincy. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that one was very interesting. And the rest of that team, like when you're pulling that up, like it's just on the offensive line. I mean, even on the inside, even if you were to be playing guard, you've got Edwards and Torrance, but again, behind them, it's relatively unproven. They like what they've seen from Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia, but
Right.
um, I feel like he could have been really valuable as either that third guard or that third tackle, or
Yeah.
just your sixth lineman. Really, like I thought that was a little goofy. Like when they brought him in, I was like, oh, nice, like that's great depth if he doesn't win a starting spot. So I wonder what that looks like. Maybe he had a rough camp, and that's what's so tough to keep up with outside of
Right.
your favorite team
Right.
is like the camp vibes. So a lot of these, if it's your favorite team I'm talking about, they might not be as surprising to you. Um, but these are the ones that stand out to me. It's either priors I have from their NFL tape, or it's
Yeah.
watching them in college, one or the other. But before I jump to the next bunch, thanks to everybody who's tuning in. We got a few live here. Um, and we are, I think it's 37 subscribers away from 700. Maybe it's 36 now, thanks to our
Wow.
buddy Mitch. Um, and we would love to get there over the course of the NFL season. So if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. This, our flagship NFL program, Necessary Roughness, will be live every Tuesday at 9, 8 Central. We've also got fantasy shows hosted by Trev and my good Vikings fan buddy Josh Limasand. You'll see awesome guys like Ben Parker, Simon Short, Michael Allen, and the rest of the bite-sized guys on these programs, Kev, James, all the guys, and we will have a ton of content for you over the course of the NFL season. We also talk basketball, the whole nine. So hit that button and give us a like while you're there, if you don't mind. Yeah. Lee makes a good point here. Oh, here we go. Oh, nice. So
Coming in hot now.
Only 30 away.
Nice.
There we go.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Let Rand cook. Trevor, you know exactly who Rand is. Rand Carthon, GM of the Tennessee Titans. I've been a huge fan of what he's done since he took over for John Robinson. So I am with you there, James. A lot of nice moves, particularly on the defensive side of the ball over the last couple of off seasons here. So, it's so funny to say stuff like that when you're from the mountaintop. You guys, UKC fans, you can just say, "Who's that guy?" I've never seen him win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's about the kind of comments that Bill Belichick used to make when he was lording over the Patriots dynasty, right? It was like, I don't know who we're playing next week, but we'll probably beat them because I got Tom Brady and a good defense.
Yeah, we're on to Cincinnati. Shut up about this guy. Oh man,
James just loves Kansas City, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Couple others that stuck out to me at least a little bit. So the Saints moved on from Jonathan Abram. Might be the end of the line for him. Had a lot of kind of high hopes early on, and was it still Oakland? Might have still been Oakland.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds
at
right.
the time. But when he started with the Raiders and had some highs and lows, bounced around a little bit, rostered for New Orleans last year, played a few snaps, but doesn't ultimately make the final roster. And when you look at the secondary, they're trotting out pretty strong corner group. It's another one of those situations where you're like, okay, who ends up in the slot? Is that Alante? Is it Paulson Adebo? But yeah, this is a case where, this is a roster where if there was anything left of that kind of early read on Jonathan Abram, this is a roster he should have been able to make. Opposite Tyrann Mathieu, it's Jordan Howden. JT Gray is the third safety, and Will Harris is the fourth safety they ended up rostering. So that's a bummer. And this is another case where you're starting to see, like, if you have guys on whom you have pretty strong priors that they're passable NFL players, and they're getting cut, look at the situation that they weren't able to find a roster spot in. and maybe reassess some of your opinions on them if you're not able to watch them as consistently as those teams. So that was one that was interesting to me. And also the Niners move on from Rock Yassin, which is another one where it seems like just a year or two ago we were talking about this is a quality number 2 corner. This guy can start. Even if he's not following Gus Bradley everywhere, I thought maybe he would find a roster spot. But that's another interesting one too. We'll wrap the show in just a little bit. I know you've got to get on to another one. You're a busy man. But before we go, any other cuts that jumped out to you that we saw today? I covered most of the ones that were, setting sirens off for me and just like, I thought he was better. And they're layered situations. It's not always this guy's better than this guy. There's a lot of strategy to it, and a lot of these guys will find their way onto rosters still. But any other big surprises outside of that?
I've got one. Number one rule, though, of any great prognosticator, which of course you and I are, is to quickly pivot off of an opinion or a hot take the very second you figure out that it's not going to catch in for you, right? Just move on, because you put it in a great nutshell. Camp vibes is a great way to put it, because we've all done tape work. We know what this guy looked like in college. We probably know what he looked like at his last stop. We've probably seen enough tape to have a pretty good feel for this guy. But over the past 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, we don't know who's gotten out of shape. We don't know who's gotten a little old and lost a step, literally since the last time we saw them on an NFL football field. We don't know who's struggling to truly get over an injury that they've gotten. That we knew they had the injury last season, but they're just not being able to come back from it the way they were. And we also don't know who's just tired, man. Life happens, NFL happens, football happens. Sometimes your family's pulling on you. You've made enough money. You've got this young up-and-coming rookie that's kind of taking your spot anyway. It's just time to move on in life. Camp vibes is a great way to put that, man, because you just never know what's actually happening in real time right now versus what we actually did see during the last NFL season or the last college season. It's a great way to put it. My one of the surprises, Matt Breida. I don't know if that's injury related or not, but man, for the 49ers to let him go, the 49ers have a very top-heavy roster. They don't necessarily have a whole lot of just great grab-you depths.
Also moved on from Danny Gray, who I really liked coming out.
Right. So, that surprised me a little bit, but they know what they want to do. They know who's kind of fitting the cogs in the system, So I they'll be just fine. The Breida thing did surprise me a little bit, but the 49ers. And then I'm going to go back and touch on the Bills real quick. You mentioned the Bills running back room. On fantasy side thing, you mentioned it. Ray Davis moved up to number 2 in that running back room. He's just an injury or a James Cook slipping away from him being the number 1 option there. So, if you've got room on a team, a large team, maybe take a look at Ray Davis, the rookie slipping up there. I think that probably was a big reason why they let go of Frank Gore, which did surprise me. The question is, how committed are the Bills to a running game? I don't know yet. We'll find out. We'll see if they keep pushing it. But, no matter how committed they are, the number 1 running back is going to get some touches, get some touchdowns. We'll see if Ray Davis starts getting a lion's share of that as the season progresses. Not September, but maybe October, November.
Yeah, and if you're Buffalo, your number 2 running back's probably just under center, right?
Right.
You're probably going to be able to make that work.
Yes.
But still interesting. I would be drafting James Cook very highly in my fantasy drafts this year. I'll knock out these couple of comments before we sign off here too. I really like Spears. If Pollard's healthy, of course, and Spears got like 5.9 yards per touch last season when he was spelling Derrick Henry, solid in the passing game. I think in a bigger role when you're trying to keep Pollard fresh, I think he could have a really nice season. And this is a funny back and forth. I think it's Isaac Guerendo right now. Trev, I think Guerendo out of I cannot remember where he went to school. I remember
don't ask me.
Watching a little bit of him.
That's going to be RB3 and SF. Thanks, Trev.
Well, it looks like it anyway. Oh, Jonathan Brooks. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know, they're gonna spread it out, you know, if they've got, even if, you know, no matter who they've got, you could see a lot of 12 out of Buffalo too, just to kind of strengthen that run game. I think you're gonna see a ton of Kincaid. Um, so they'll be very interesting on both sides of the ball. Buffalo's gonna be extremely interesting. Matt Milano might miss the entire season. He's gonna miss a lot of it. Um, and again, it's the changing of the guard on the defense. So I'm super interested in how that season goes. Um, yeah, Rico Dowdle, because how many touches is Zeke really going to get?
He can't carry a full load anymore, right? There's no way.
No,
Yeah.
no, he's going to steal some touchdowns from you, I'm sure. If you're relying on Rico Dowdle, I'm sure he'll steal some red zone touches. But yeah, I agree with that, Trev, too. That's a good one. Yeah, exactly, Lee. So anyway, thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks so much, Ben, for joining me on this one, especially on short notice. It was a fun conversation. We'll have to do it again sometime. You're always welcome back on the show. And I said it at the top, but before we get out of here, let the people know where they can find you and your excellent work as well.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I've enjoyed the comments too. I really appreciate everybody jumping in. I'll hit 2 tonight. Sports and Money KC. It's on YouTube. That's about a 30-minute show, 40-minute show that we do every week, and then sometimes I add on a second video about just anything I feel like covering. So that's Sports and Money KC on YouTube, and then the one I'm about to go to right now. It's our Tuesday night podcast. It's called Odds on Favorite with Robertson Buyer. Doesn't usually come out until late Wednesday, early Thursday, but Odds on Favorites on Apple and Spotify. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I can vouch for both programs. They're fun watches. If you like this, you'll like that. And if you like this, I'm sure you'll like our Supersized Sports show on Thursdays, headed by Kev and James. You'll love what Trev and Josh are doing on the fantasy side of things on Fridays. Not Wednesdays, Fridays, right?
I think it's Fridays, yeah.
Yep, and then outside of that, you'll see on Supersize, they'll be talking everything sports news. They talked Olympics. It's our basketball night when basketball's running, but in the basketball off season, they cover whatever they can. Oh, it is Wednesdays. Wednesdays. Check out the fantasy show. We suck.
We suck, man.
I could have swore. Yeah. Listen, we got a lot of stuff going on. We got 4 live shows a week. Also, check out Kevin James over on our sister channel, Dweeb. Talking all kinds of nerdy crap that I'm sure there is some crossover and interest from. If you like how nerdy we are about cut day, then you'll like nerding out about movies and shows and things like that as well. But again, thanks to everybody in the chat: Trev, Lee, Kev, James, Rapid Danger, Noob Rockney, Lee. If I didn't say Lee already. Couple more probably high up that I missed, and all you window watchers who didn't comment, thanks as well for tuning in. Hit that like button on your way out. It would help us a ton. Subscribe if you haven't already. Again, we're looking to reach that 700 subscribers goal as soon as we possibly can, hopefully during the NFL season, and we will reward you guys with consistent content that we'd love your input on in the chat as well. Thanks again, guys. I've been John. That's Ben Parker. This is Necessary Roughness on Bite Size Sports. Have a good one.